you want to sit or stand? But I was like, this sitting sounds fun. It's such a blessing to be here. And I just want to open up in prayer. So maybe we can all stand for that. Heavenly Father, we thank you for what you're doing in this moment. We thank you for each and every one that is present here, oh God. Lord, you've called us to be sent into all the world, into every sphere of influence, including technology. And I thank you, Lord God, that your daughters would know that being used by you does not look like one thing. It could look like many aspects of life, and especially in different fields. And so, Lord, we invite your presence into this space, and we ask you that you would have your way in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. You know, it could feel interesting to have a tech conference and there's a sermon. But the beauty of that, and what I think is so significant about that, is that it should actually be the norm. And in our conversation today, I'm going to share why that is. You know, today's session is Divine Innovation, Finding and Following Your Purpose in Tech. And purpose is such an interesting word. You know, when you think about culture today, when people use the word purpose, it has this idea of like, who am I, right? We start to put our identity in what we do versus recognizing that who we are, it's outside of what we do. We bring who we are into what we do. And so who are we? You know, one of the things that I have learned in my walk with God is that our lives didn't start here. It started with God. I have an 11-month-old daughter, and how I found that I was pregnant was an angel encountered me to tell me I was pregnant. And I remember that at the time we were like 3 months into the marriage. So we were not, it's not that we weren't trying, but we were not trying with that intention. But what was so interesting about that is for many years, God has been speaking to me about my daughter, speaking to me about where she's called to, what she's called to do. And for me was to realize her life started with him. And when he would send her to the earth at whatever time that he desires, that she has a unique purpose to fulfill. And it would not look like what I'm doing. And so there were things that he was preparing my heart for ahead of time, even before I met her father. And so when I got pregnant and I had this, and if some of you know me, my relationship with God has always been familiar with the supernatural. So I have this encounter with an angel, and then I run to my husband. I'm like, yo, I think we're pregnant. And so we check and we confirm. But that is just to confirm the understanding that you didn't start here. No matter how, we know where we live. We have our doctor that we like. We have our dentist and all of that. But our lives didn't start here. It started with God. And so we all carry the same unique purpose, but different expressions. And so our purpose on this earth is to know God and make him known. How we do that is our assignment. That's why I love when it says, finding and following your purpose in tech. So there is the purpose that stands. Know God, make him known in tech. And so for some, it's in, religious fields. It could be in medical fields. It could be in education. But there is a call on your life that you are called to conquer a certain sphere of influence to bring the knowledge of God to that space. And we're going to see what that looks like even in the Bible, right? So it's so beautiful. There are two scriptures that have this connection. Genesis 1:28. It says, then God blessed them. And this was the first family. This was the first creation, Adam. Then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and govern it. To govern is to conquer. Is to take territory of all the earth. Filling the earth was not about bodies. It was about fill the earth with the influence of who I am. Govern the earth with the influence of who I am on this earth. You see, God created us as an extension of his kingdom, as an extension of his rule and reign. that we would be on the earth and rule and reign the same manner that he rules and reigns in the heavens, but that we would be an expression of his kingdom on the earth. And so then we jump all the way to Matthew 24:14, and then it says, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. You see, they're all connected. Fill the earth and subdue it. The gospel of the kingdom would be preached to the ends of the earth. Your assignment is to know God and make him known. And so often we think that we live in this gray area. And I want to show you something that really, one of the things that really captured my understanding foundationally in God about the warfare that we experience on this earth without even knowing it. You see, from the very beginning, the enemy has been after this purpose, the true purpose of our lives to be expressed on this earth. You see, when God created you, he created you in his image, in his likeness. And what does that mean? That you would represent him in all things. And what the enemy was looking for is that you would represent him. And we get caught up in like, this is just my way of doing things. This is who I am and all this stuff. And we don't realize that on the earth, there are only two kingdoms you could serve. Your life is either an expression of the kingdom of God, or it's an expression of the kingdom of darkness. Even if you don't know, there is something your life is representing to the earth. And we're going to see this story also through the first family. You see, from the very beginning, when Adam and Eve fell in sin, and in that moment they lost their authority. But God, in his mercy and his goodness, he gave a promise to the woman. And he said that her seed will conquer the seed of the enemy. What was he talking about? He was really speaking about Jesus. That when Jesus will come on the earth, he will conquer what the enemy has done. He will take back the authority that the enemy took from them. But they didn't realize the language of what God was saying. The woman is thinking that, she's going to have a child. She's the one to have the child that will conquer, that will come against Satan. And Satan, because again, God is speaking from an eternal perspective. They're receiving it from a limited mindset. And so we're going to read this scripture, and you're going to see how from the very beginning, the enemy was after a civilization that would be outside of the presence and the knowledge of God. And so with Adam and Eve, let's go to Genesis 4:1-10. It says, now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. You see, this was so significant because she receives this promise. They mess up, right? They eat the fruit. And there's a curse that comes with it. They realize this was the wrong thing. She receives this promise from God. And then she has a son, and she's thinking this is the son. So she's like, wow, I have acquired a man from the Lord. So certainly, when I study this text, it's almost as though she's believing that this would be the one to bring back salvation, because they don't know the fullness of what God was doing. And it says, then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of his firstborn, of his flock, and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. Now, the anger is so interesting because anger is rooted in pride. The true emotion is that you are hurt. But when it turns to anger, is that you don't even want to acknowledge your hurt. And it's like, how dare this happen? And pride shows up. And pride is a very dangerous thing because it is the root of all sin. Pride is what gives the enemy access, because pride is what caused him to fall. It comes from him. And so the moment pride shows up, and we're going to continue. You're going to see what God says to him. And so the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. God is talking about sin not just as a thing, as a personality, that it is waiting on you. The enemy is waiting on you. He wants to use you as a trophy for his kingdom. He's literally looking, how can I convert you to take on my image? And so, but the Lord is like, but you can rule over this thing if you humble yourself. But then as we continue, it says, now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. This was the first murder in the Bible. And whose image does this look like? God or the devil? The devil. It was always about image. Because he's dealing with pride. The pride goes unchecked. So the enemy has access to influence him. And now he commits the first murder on earth. And then as we continue, it says, and the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Then we're going to jump to verse 16 to 19. Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. This is such a significant part. Because now Cain leaves the presence of God. The presence of God was not a location. It was the consciousness. Because when you study Cain, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have interactions with the Lord, but he separates himself with the will of God, with the agenda of God, from the image of God to take on another image. So Cain comes out of the presence of the Lord, goes to another land, and begins to build a civilization that would represent the kingdom of darkness. You see, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. To Enoch was born, all these people were born, right? And then it gets to this child named Lamech. Now, verse 19. Then Lamech took for himself 2 wives. This was the first polygamist. So, yeah, you know what y'all remind me of? Have y'all seen the thing with the women? But I want you to track with me. Because Cain, first of all, he's the first murderer. Then in his seed, the first polygamist. And when you study his children, even the one who came up with the innovation for weapons and violence came from the lineage of Cain. So everything the enemy represented came from his lineage. You see, we're not living a random life on earth. God created you to do things from his presence, so that in everything you do, you would reflect him and you would make him known. Outside of his presence, whether you know it or not, there is a different spirit that begins to govern what you do. And Cain, he's just thinking, look, I'm just living my life. I'm just doing what I choose to do, not realizing now not only him, but his lineage is taken after the image of Satan. You see, finding and following your purpose begins in the presence of God. It's not that being called by God looks like ministry. No. It looks like technology. It looks like entertainment. It looks like media. It looks like broadcasting. Because God has called you to dominate, to take territory in every sphere of influence. But why? It's not just to have a name in it, but it's to make his name known, to represent his image in those spaces. You see, one of my best friends, before we really connected, she told me this story when she was an atheist and she needed to go to therapy. And one of the best therapists recommended to her, she realized that she was a Christian. And she tells the therapist, like, hey, I know you're a Christian, but I don't want any of that, right? She's like, I don't believe in God. And the therapist says, I'm not here to preach to you, but I love Jesus. And so you're going to get a little bit of him just in who I am. Not that I'm going to try to preach to you or anything like that, but it's just who I am. And she's like, okay, we could work that out. But that therapist lifestyle, the way she talked, the way she saw life, it planted a seed in my best friend. And that was one of the things that literally drew her heart to Jesus. You see, wherever you are, there is an image you're called to bear. There is what you're called to represent. And when you have that heart posture, God will partner with you. You see, innovation, at the heart of innovation, is the discovery of new possibilities. And there are many things that we have not discovered because there's a mystery behind how does this become real? How is this a possibility? But with God, He can open your eyes, give you ideas and insight, and put you at the head even when you just started. Because that is the beauty of partnership. When you're walking with God in what you do, He causes you to do the supernatural naturally. You see, even as we close, I'm reminded when we talk about innovation, I'm reminded about Madam C.J. Walker. And the hair care line that she's so well known for, became a millionaire, changed her life and the lives of many. If you ever read her story, that came to her in a dream. She was praying and asking God for the solution behind this hair loss that she was dealing with. And in a dream, God showed up. But he shows up, and when God speaks, He speaks through symbols and different things. And so the way it came to her, a man shows up in a dream and tells her the ingredients that she should mix together. And those ingredients would be the solution for hair loss. When she woke up from the dream, she sourced every product. And that is what made her a multimillionaire. A message from a dream from God. And so when you partner with God, you don't have to be the most knowledgeable. You have to have a heart and a hunger to say, God, in this space, I feel a call to technology. I feel a call to this space. But I want this space to first of all, make you known. And so walk with me, partner with me, and show the world what it looks like for a life to be submitted to God in this space. And you will see God do some mighty things through your life. You're called. You're not going to be here if you're not called. But your first assignment, know Him. And through what you do, make Him known. Thank you.